There's big, and then there's Emmanuel Iheanacho big. 6 foot 6.5, 345 pounds, and the scariest part of that sentence isn't even the numbers. It's what happens when you actually watch him move. Because guys this size aren't supposed to bend, they aren't supposed to pull, they aren't supposed to get out in space and lead a running back through the second level. They definitely aren't supposed to play basketball on the side and throw down dunks. Iheanacho does all of it, and he's about to walk onto the Oregon campus as the #1 interior offensive lineman in the 2026 class, the #8 overall prospect in the country on the composite, and one of the most physically impressive high school players anybody has seen in years. The kid from Georgetown Prep in Bethesda, Maryland, is a problem for defensive linemen, for opposing coaches, and honestly, for Oregon's coaching staff trying to figure out where exactly to put him, because at his size, with these tools, the Ducks have options they didn't know they'd have. Start with the film, because the film is where the hype starts and where it keeps building. Iheanacho didn't allow a sack as a senior. He didn't allow one as a junior either. Back to back seasons without giving up a single sack at one of the most competitive private school programs on the East Coast. Georgetown Prep isn't a soft schedule. The Interstate Athletic Conference is loaded with talent, and Iheanacho spent 2 full seasons locking down the blind side without surrendering a single trip to his quarterback. That's not a stat you see often from a high school left tackle, especially one carrying over 340 pounds. The dominance showed up everywhere on the tape. He's resetting the line of scrimmage on contact, driving defensive tackles 5 yards off the ball like they weighed 190 pounds. He's pulling from the backside and getting to his spot with the kind of balance you just don't see from guys this size. He's climbing to the second level and wiping out linebackers. And when he gets his hand on a defender, the play is over. One evaluator who watched him at the Under Armour All America game up close said Iheanacho can move a 300-pound defensive lineman like most people pick up a potato chip. That's the kind of quote that stops you when you read it. But when you see it on film, it's not an exaggeration. It's just what happens. He also earned some of the most prestigious honors available to a high school offensive lineman. Washington Post All-Met Offensive Player of the Year, Max Preps All-American, back-to-back Max Preps Junior and Senior All-American nods. He participated in the Under Armour All-American game as an underclassman, repping at both left guard and left tackle against the best defensive linemen in the country. That versatility matters because it's part of what makes him such a unique prospect. Here's what separates Iheanacho from the standard 340-pound high school lineman the recruiting sites pump up every cycle. It's the movement. Guys at his size are almost always stiff. They're powerful, sure. They're immovable at the point of attack, sure. But ask them to pull, ask them to climb, ask them to mirror a counter move on pass protection, and things fall apart in a hurry. Iheanacho can do all of it. His lateral slide is legitimate. His ability to bend at the knees and hips instead of doubling over at the waist is what coaches at the college level drool over. He can stay low, he can change direction, and he can redirect his momentum in tight spaces. One Under Armour staffer who stood 5 feet behind him during offensive line drill said it plainly. That's not a normal human being moving out there. The basketball background is part of the explanation. Iheanacho grew up playing hoops at a legitimate level, and he still throws down dunks at 350 pounds. That hand-eye coordination, that body control, that understanding of how to move through space, those habits don't go away just because he put on 50 pounds and started playing offensive line. They show up every time he pulls around a tackle or gets out on a screen pass. And they're why Oregon offensive line coach Alik Terry and head coach Dan Lanning are looking at Iheanacho and thinking about comparisons to players who just didn't play, but became first-round NFL draft picks from this program. The most mentioned parallel is Josh Conerly Jr. Conerly played as a true freshman in Oregon's jumbo package, started as a sophomore, developed into an All-American by his junior year, and got drafted in the first round by the Washington Commanders. Conerly also came to Oregon with a basketball background and that same kind of rare athleticism at tackle. Iheanacho isn't just a one-to-one with Conerly, he's bigger, he's more of a mauler in the run game, and his athletic profile is a little different, but the developmental ceiling is similar. And in the most recent Big Ten championship game, Conerly shut down Penn State's Abdul Carter. That's the kind of ceiling we're talking about for Iheanacho if the development goes the way Oregon expects it to. Now, here's where the analyst conversation gets interesting because there's a real question about where exactly Iheanacho plays. He came out of Georgetown Prep as a left tackle. That's where he earned his All-American honors. That's where he shut down sacks for 2 straight seasons. But at 345 pounds with the frame he's carrying, there's a legitimate conversation about whether his long term home is at guard. The argument for tackle is straightforward. He can bend, he can slide, he can handle speed to some degree, and he proved it against elite edge rushers at the Under Armour All America game. The argument for guard is equally fair. At his size, he's going to mash interior defensive tackles in the run game like they don't belong on the field with him. His power profile is ideal for the position. His ability to pull short and long from the guard spot makes him a weapon in counter and power concepts. And let's be honest, in the NFL, the money is at tackle, but the fit is often at guard for guys with his build. Oregon's scheme actually works in his favor regardless of where they put him. The Ducks run a power heavy scheme with quick passing concepts. That means Iheanacho isn't going to spend every snap backpedaling against speed rushers on 5-step and 7-step drops. He's going to be asked to mash in the run game and set a firm edge on play action and quick game. That's a scheme that makes his transition to tackle easier than it would be at a program running pure drop back passing. And if they decide to move him inside, they already have a kid who's been coached well at pass protection and has the foot quickness to handle interior twists and stunts. The question everyone wants answered is whether Iheanacho can play as a true freshman. The honest answer is maybe, and that's a significant statement for an offensive lineman. Most freshman offensive linemen aren't ready. The learning curve is steep, the physical demands are brutal, and the mental side of pass protection takes time to master. But Iheanacho has a few things working in his favor. First, he already has a college-ready frame. He doesn't need to spend 2 years in the weight room before he can physically hold up. Second, he has a genuine power that translates immediately. You can't teach a kid to move 300-pound defensive linemen against their will. He already does it. Third, Oregon's coaching staff has a track record of playing freshmen when the freshmen are ready. Dan Lanning has said it repeatedly: if you're good enough, you're old enough. The roster situation is the complicating factor. Oregon has experienced returners at most spots along the line. The left guard spot is the only real opening with Douglas Utu and Kawika Rogers expected to compete for it. That means Iheanacho's most realistic path to freshman playing time is either winning the left guard job outright or earning a role as a sixth lineman in jumbo packages, the same path Conerly took before becoming a full-time starter as a sophomore. The expectation league-wide is that Iheanacho is a plug-and-play starter by his sophomore year at the latest. By the time he's a junior, if the development continues at his current pace, he's an All-American candidate. And by the time he leaves Oregon, he's an early-round NFL draft pick. That's the projection, those are the stakes, and that's why the Ducks landing him was one of the most significant recruiting wins of the entire cycle. The one hottest concern surrounding Iheanacho is weight management. At 345 to 350 pounds, he's carrying a lot. He reportedly dropped a few pounds between his junior and senior years, which is encouraging. But every offensive line coach in America will tell you the same thing. Energy fades in the second half when a lineman is carrying too much weight. Iheanacho's athletic gifts are only as useful as his conditioning allows them to be. If he shows up at Oregon and maintains or trims his playing weight while keeping his power, he's going to be a problem for defensive linemen for the next 3 years. If he adds weight or struggles with conditioning, the athletic upside gets capped. That's the development conversation. And it's one that Oregon staff will handle because that's what good offensive line programs do. Emmanuel Iheanacho is the rarest kind of high school football player. He's a 345-pound lineman who moves like somebody 100 pounds lighter. He's a 2-time Max Preps All-American who hasn't allowed a sack in 2 years. He's a basketball player who can dunk. He's the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the country, the number 8 overall prospect, and he's headed to a program that has turned players just like him into first-round NFL draft picks. You can't teach his size, you can't teach his power, and you absolutely cannot teach the combination of size, power, and bend that he brings to the position. That's the story on Emmanuel Iheanacho. The talent is real, the ceiling is enormous, and the next few years in Eugene are going to be worth watching very closely. This is Blitz All Media, where we cover the hottest football prospects in America before the rest of the world catches up. Subscribe, drop a comment below, and tell me whether you think Iheanacho plays tackle or guard at the next level, and whether he's the next first-round offensive lineman to come out of Oregon. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.